You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty.
Don't be afraid to speak what's on your mind. Be respectful, but say what you mean to me what you say type of deal.
It's inspiring. You're out there actually doing what you said you were going to do.
For me, it was really surreal, and it really kind of validated why I'm doing this. When I opened it up, put the outside canvas down, and they just looked, and they went, oh my God, oh my God.
All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call, and today my guest is David Wissman. David is, he was an educator. He's always been, I think, an artist, and he basically, as he's sort of retired from his previous, life, he's been deep into painting and doing artwork. And he reached out to me a few years back and for a picture I had taken in the backcountry with my friend Tanis in the Cassiar Mountains. Mm-hmm. The picture just spoke to him. It speaks to me as well. It's one of my favorite pictures from my backcountry experiences, probably partly because of who Tanis is and just the memories I have of that place. I gave him the photo, and then he painted it. He made like an oil painting, and he's an incredible artist, and I've watched him over the last few years, and he's painted a lot of other photos that I've seen that are incredible. So I wanted to have him on the podcast. It's long overdue. In fact, I recorded this before I became ill with the old pandemic flu, which put me in the hospital and really made me sick for a couple of months. And I actually had a long hiatus from the podcast for, 5 or 6 months. And
you screwed up our elk hunt, everything.
I screwed up everything. So it was a rough going. So this podcast I actually recorded prior to all that, back in, I think it was August. So it's long overdue, but I really enjoyed my conversation with David. He's just a thoughtful and deep person. I really enjoyed it. I think if you're interested in some of his work, you can go check out the Instagram that he has. Yep. And it's well worth it. You can buy some of the prints, and it's very, very cool. So we share a lot of values as well. Yeah. And that was really neat to connect. So I hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I did. And speaking of art, you should check out the Borderland packs made by Coulter Day. We've mentioned them before. They're modeled after the 1900s pack boards that old timers used to use, and cool. You can put your furs and your hides and your
Euro mounts, sheds.
My favorite is when they actually do the taxidermy in the head and everything, but that they have it on the board so it looks like
the sheep is awesome. Like you got a sheep head, and then you still got all the hide from the sheep,
and it's tied on with like jute rope and old timey stuff. I think you'd be interested. If you haven't seen the podcast episode, go check it out. Yep. It's well worth it. But use the code GRITTY over there, and you're going to save at Borderland. Find all the links to all the products in the description field in the YouTube videos. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to jump into this podcast with David. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. Like, subscribe to the channel. We're eager to hear what you think. I really enjoyed this one. Hope you do too. Stay gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and today my guest is David Wissman. And David, I met you online, really, through social media. I think your son was the first person that he DM'd me, and he's like, "Hey, check this out. My dad's been doing some artwork. He's thinking about doing a little more of this." And then I got in touch with you a little bit, and there were some pictures I had taken that you were interested in doing some artwork with, and I was like, "Yeah, that'd be cool to see that." And from there, how long has it been?
I would say a year and a half. And my son was the impetus in that. He said, get a hold of Call, because I wanted to do these big pieces, and I wanted to catch you guys in your element. So I think it's been about 2 years.
Since that time, first of all, I want to give people a little background on what it is that you do. So on your Instagram here, there's just all of this artwork that you have created. I think the audience needs to go and check it all out because it's really cool, beautiful work.
I appreciate that.
And they're oil paintings. Is that
yes, sir?
Primarily?
Yep, all oil. Yep,
all oil. My grandma did tons of oil paintings and put them in art galleries when I was
no kidding.
And we have a few in the house that are really special to the family. I'm just curious, what led you into the artist stuff, and how did you get involved in that?
Well, I got to go back to probably junior high, middle school.
Mm-hmm.
I was a 3-sport athlete coming out of high school. It was interesting. The thing that I love to do was sketch and paint, dabbling around in it. I'd much rather be in that than bio class or anything like that. So I became very good friends with one of the art teachers, and he saw my liking in it. And, one thing led to another. And, he made a lot of accommodations for me. If I had study hall and whatnot, he'd break me out of study hall and I go down and spend time in the art studio, which probably in hindsight wasn't the best thing to do, but there was always been a passion. I think I did my first painting when I was like 10 or 11, just a simple landscape, a covered bridge out in the country. And I still have that today. Actually, my wife just dug it up for me. It was hiding somewhere. So I went through high school and I painted a lot. Any free chance I had besides playing sports, I was in the art studio. And this small little sleepy town where I grew up in western Massachusetts, very rural. We actually got Mondays off for opening day from school, which is cool. You still hear about that a little bit, but not much anymore. So that was the start of the whole thing with the art. I mean, I've always enjoyed the paint. I think it started even younger than that because I suffered with some dyslexia. And in, I would say 4th or 5th grade, they were trying to figure out what my disability was. I was having trouble seeing words and seeing them backwards and not being able to comprehend what I was looking at. It was easy for me to draw and paint, sketch, and than it was to read the, written text. So that's how it kind of evolved to there. Once I left high school, I had 3 offers in 3 sports. I chose football. And I ended up at University of New Hampshire in Durham. I was a captain up there, all conference. I was a punt and kick returner. But I managed to grab a few classes here and there up there. Just like I go through these phases like, I want to go back. I'm going to do my drawing and painting. Football can be a drag a little bit, just the demand on it and what they're asking you to do, which I loved. So I grabbed a few classes here and there at the University of New Hampshire. It was funny. I remember showing up to my first major modeling class, and I was late to class, and I was pretty ripped up back in the day as a strong safety, and I was banging on the door because I didn't want to be late to the class. And the gal opened the door, and I said, she goes, "Oh, do you need something?" I said, "Yeah, I think I'm in this class." And she kind of looked at me, gave me a once over, up and down, and she goes, "No, I'm sorry, son. I think you're in the wrong building."
Yeah.
And so I went away from that, and I said, "Well, maybe this isn't the time to dive back into it." And, but my degree is in art. I'm a studio arts degree, but I left it for the longest time because of my teaching in high school and both public and private. I spent 20-something years teaching in public and private school, pottery, drawing, acrylics, oils. But it never really allowed me the time to kind of do what I wanted to do, which is to paint the things that I was kind of centered to and gravitating towards. And then I left the public and private school of teaching, and decided I'd had enough of it. And I ended up coaching football, and that grabbed 14 years of my life, and at the 1AA and 1A level. And it was interesting. I was at the UMass Amherst as a D-line coach, and it was my second year there. And my office actually was on the corner of the building, Brian, that I could look out to the west. And it was the umpteenth year that I sat and watched the leaves turn and wonder what my nephews are doing and what my boys are doing and where they were going to be, what state they were going to be hunting in. And I just decided, I think it was in October of 18. I said, you know what? I had a little bit of ablation work done, which I think was a direct fallout from the hours that I spent coaching for years. And I said, enough is enough. And I said, I want to go back and I want to capture things on canvas that are everything that I love, the hunting and the fishing, and try to keep that culture alive and the heritage that I was blessed as a kid, hunting and fishing. And I walked away from everything and I said, all right, I'm going to give it a go. And my wife's a school teacher. So we said, well, we'll give it a go for 3 years. And that's when I started down the road of started with Aaron, then I did one of Donnie, and obviously I did one of you, and kind of one thing led to another. And I think I'm up to 16 pieces now and they're big pieces. Yours is a big piece. And I think yours was roughly maybe 2 months in work. And God blessed bullwhips, and I call them bullwhips that were all around your horses. They drove me freaking bananas because it was every day. That's all I'm doing. I'm doing 3-4 inches of bullwhips and trying to get you coming back into the piece and trying to get real good depth from the mountains way off and the vista. And I guess the bottom line, you asked me about the inception of the art. It starts with the disability that drove me to kind of do my own thing that I felt comfortable doing, that I felt I got accolades. People say, oh, you're pretty good at drawing. So, but I left it for a number of years to chase my other dream of coaching football. So,
before on the way home, I was just visiting my grandpa in Oregon over the weekend. He's got a few months to live. So we were visiting with him. And as I was coming back, just then thinking a lot about, just looking back on life and how blessed I've been. It didn't always go the way I wanted it to, but all in all, I have a lot to be grateful for. And, and I was thinking about us getting together and having a discussion, and I was meeting with a friend of ours while I was there who sort of, my wife has a degree in interior design, but mostly she's just extremely creative. She paints, she's done murals, and she's really big into, watercolor art and things like that. And then I like to make movies, which I consider like in art too, in that domain. And I was talking to this artist friend of ours who mentored us a little bit over the years. In fact, he's a big reason why I quit my job and went ahead and went into doing all this.
Things you love.
Yep. And he said, you need to listen to this show. And it was Jordan Peterson and the Art Institute of Canada or something like that. I can't recall the name right now, but it was on the psychology of creatives, or the psychology of creativity.
Yep.
And it was really interesting to hear them talk, because I resonated with a lot of what they were saying in terms of what creative people are like. And one of the things that he mentioned in there was so many creative people find so much depth and purpose and meaning in their creativity and doing the thing that, like, you're excited to get up in the morning and you're excited to do the thing, and you could tediously spend hours on this little thing that other people don't even see except for you. They see it, but they don't know that they're seeing it. When I do a film, they don't know why they like it. They just know that they liked it. But for me, I'm like, all these little details are what matter, and the sound and the video and all the combination of it, and the way the story is told. And I feel like, and one of the things that he mentioned was, it's very difficult for creative people to monetize what they do. Like, being a creative person, that's the part we're all good at. But the other part, which is turning it into a career or an income, is a lot more difficult. He's also said, though, that a lot of creatives don't really care that much if they have a lot of money, because they actually find so much purpose and meaning in what they're creating that the money is highly secondary,
Right.
Any monetization. So they tend to not be hyper wealthy people. And he mentioned how, unfortunately as well, we have a society where most people are not, where a large portion of the population is not in that creative zone. So they have a hard time valuing it at the level that perhaps society should, because they tend to overlook art and overlook a lot of these things, not realizing how much it does benefit their lives and their homes and their surroundings. To surround yourself in beautiful art within your home sets a tone for you to also reach levels of peace. And he talked about how in Europe, people travel, hundreds of thousands of miles to go to Europe and see it just because of its beauty.
Right.
And he said, Canada is ugly. Like, all the buildings are ugly. The cities are ugly. Now, the nature is beautiful, but the architecture and all of that is very utilitarian and practical. And he said, I don't think Canadians realize how detrimental that actually is, and how much investing in a beautiful place to live actually changes your future. And, I think it had me thinking about my home and what art I display and what I choose to put on my walls or surround myself with. And I feel like even for myself, it's something that I need to work on, because it does beautify my home, and then it represents and tells a story of who I am. And there's a lot of depth and stuff. He said, especially as a creative person, when you bring that stuff into your home and it's there, it sparks your creativity to have that place to sit down and be in while you create.
Right. With my pieces, that the one thing that I wanted to evoke from somebody like yourself or Donnie, I'm kind of excited Donnie's going to see that big piece for the first time in a little bit, is, kind of that wow moment that you interact with the piece. And you sit there and you say, wow. But it also draws you to the details of it, to the bullwhips, to the skyline, to pebbles in a rock bank that are hundreds and hundreds of different shades and different colors, that it kind of places like what you're saying, it puts you almost in a spiritual mode that, okay, the almighty dollar is not that almighty important. And that, you talk about museums in Europe. I had the luxury, my wife's a Spanish teacher, she was back then, and we took a trip to Spain and we spent 3 weeks and went to the Prado and went to Leon, went to the cathedrals, and it was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. I mean, you go to a cathedral that on the outside, is brown and just weathered and everything. But when you go inside, the stained glass, it just blows you away. The size of it, the scope of it, the color that they used to use it, and how old it is. That still is, like you say, people come from all over the world to just experience that, to sit in a pew and to say, wow, this is awe-instructing. And the Prado was the same. To see pieces of Velasquez and stuff like that, that, you kind of sit with a feeling like there's much more to life than what drives so many people today. I guess that's where my pieces, I try to, my wife's always saying, do something smaller. I said, I get claustrophobic. And I, to do something, 16 square or 20 square, not to say I couldn't do it, but I want somebody to come in and just say, oh, this is really cool. Like, to create again, a kind of a spiritual moment in somebody where they can just sit down and say it. They forget about everything else, and it kind of moves them to another place in their being that when they walk away from it, they maybe feel a little better, or somehow I've evoked something that maybe will drive them to take a different direction. Not that that's bad or good, but it'll kind of shift them a little bit than their normal everyday get up, do their thing, shut it down at night. It was interesting. I was on my way back from a gallery, which I had mentioned to you up in Rangeley, Maine. And I just recently finished a piece for John Altman that incorporated John, Will, and Josh, which is a scene at a hunting camp. And I've been kind of moving to this black and white kind of genre with, I've been mixing a little yellow ochre in with it just to give it a little flair. And then one thing led to another, and I said, John, I really want you to see it. I want you guys to see this just for my own thing. Like, what do you think? So I took the trip from Rangeley, which is 3.5 hours, cross lots in Maine to down East Maine, and byways, and trying to get to their place was unbelievable. It's a left, a right, a right, a left. And it's like, you start saying, this GPS is killing me. But I arrived, and John was there with Josh. Will hadn't arrived yet. And if anybody isn't familiar, Josh and Will do the videography for Donnie Vincent. And so I pulled up in the back, and they were on the back of the barn. And so we sat down on the back of the barn and just shooting, getting to know each other, because I had never met them, but I'd spent 2 months painting them and getting to know them through a digital photograph, and it's interesting trying to get to know somebody in that regard, and then meeting them, which was so cool. And finally I said, and all my stuff was still in, I had a easy trailer. I had 16 pieces, and they're all wrapped up. And I said, well, you guys want to see it? And Josh was quick right off the bat. He goes, yeah, let's do it. I want to look at it. So got it out, pulled it into the barn, and I'm unwrapping it, and I get it unwrapped. I should back up a little bit. Will showed up about 10 minutes before that. And so the three of them were there, and I unwrapped it, and they were kind of standing there. And just for me, you couldn't put a buck or price on just the reaction when I opened it up, put the outside canvas down, and they just looked, and they went, oh my God. And John especially kept kneeling down and just looking. They spent probably 15, 20 minutes just looking at all the details. Like I had to do cedar shakes, and then I hope I never have to do a cedar shake again. And leaves. I did a bunch of, anybody, if they go to my work, I'm really kind of fanatical about detail. That's why I loved your piece, because of the digital aspect of it. I mean, I can dive into the littlest, smallest things. And they were enamored. They like, oh my gosh, unbelievable. And so we talked, and before I knew it, Will's got a screw gun. And I mean, they're just, it's up on the wall in the back, where they got all their meat coolers. This is going up. I said, all right, dude, get it up. And so the two of the young bucks, they got it up quick. And so they sat and they looked at it, and we were just talking about, we traded stories about me doing the piece. And I talked about doing a portraiture of John. It took me like 3 takes to get his portrait done, and went through all that. And I said, you want to dig out Donnie's? And they go, let's do it. They were amped up. So Donnie's is a big piece. I think it's a 64 by 48 or something like that. I dug that out, and they were like, oh my God. Next thing I knew, like, everything's going up on the wall. It's getting plastered up there. And for me, it was really surreal. And it really kind of validated why I'm doing this. That, people ask me, like, why are you doing this? I said, because I grew up hunting and fishing, and I see an industry that sometimes through envy and through maybe lack of understanding, that it gets maligned, and it gets a bad rap. And I try to capture moments where it's about the individual and his environment, with friendships, with the people that are dear to them, that they hold to a heritage of sorts, this culture. I guess that's what I'm trying to do. And in your piece, it was coming back. I think you said it was a fairly long hunt, and you were just coming back. But to capture you and the expression on your face, like, okay, not that you want to get back to civilization, but you could tell it's good to be back. It was a successful hunt, and it was rewarding, and all those adjectives that we love to throw around when we hunt and when we go out and explore. But it captured that. So that's really what I'm trying to do, is find those scenes that are us, that people can say, oh, maybe I get it now. It's the camaraderie, it's the friendship, it's the loyalty that goes into all of it.
It's interesting that you say that, because the pieces that you've chosen and that you've done, they do evoke all those emotions that you're describing. They do communicate that, because there's I have a lot of pictures. I have a lot of experiences, moments on hunts that are special. But that moment with Tanis, I never met her before.
Yeah.
Barkman up there. How real and genuine she is. Doran, her lover, the two of them together and us up there, that for me is one of the most special captured seconds of my life in a photograph. And I look at it all the time, and it does evoke, I don't know, like there's capturing the person's face. You can't fake this stuff. It's just, it's real. And it only happened because everything came together in this special way with these special people. It isn't just the harvesting of an animal. It's the relationships and the teamwork and the camaraderie that came with the whole thing. And I wanted to ask, because you had mentioned to me a couple of photos, like, but you were the one that sort of approached me with saying, this is one I'm interested in doing. So it spoke to you on some level. It did to me as well, but I find it interesting that you were picking the same image I would pick.
Yeah. Well,
out of all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And we threw around a few of them. But like you say, it's not about, well, there's nothing bad about having a freezer full of meat. Don't get me wrong there. But I try to, I'll skim through all you guys' stuff. And I'm always looking for something that does it for me. Because I've had people ask me, why do you choose this, or why do you work this big? And which I've spoke to a little bit, but it's got to be something that inspires me because I spend so much time on it. And I've got to, I treat it the same way I coached. I was a defensive coordinator at Sacred Heart University, and then obviously the D-line coach, which I mentioned earlier at UMass. They're kind of high stakes things that you spend a lot of hours. You sleep in your office, you sleep in your truck, which I did for 4 or 5 years. And, but I kind of, that same mentality, that work ethic that I bring to the canvas is really the same thing. It's like doing, 1,500 bull whips and moose whips that just drive you bananas, but they're there and you got to do them because and maybe it's the fanatical part of me. If there's one element that's not in there that is visible on the piece, the digital or whatever I'm getting, I feel like I've neglected that one element. And of course, you say, people wouldn't even know, but I would know. So it drives me to do what I do. And I try to pick the pictures the images, the captures that does it for me. That does it for me because I think it'll do it for somebody else.
It's interesting. I do the same thing with film, and my brother who's editing with me, he's like, nobody is going to notice that. Nobody's going to hear that. Nobody sees this. That color is fine. Leave it the way it is. And I'm like, no, it's not. Yeah. It's not. And I can't let it go until it's how I want it. But I will know. Maybe he's right. Maybe the audience wouldn't know, but I'll know. And every time I watch it, I won't be happy with what it was we produced.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes, people want us to produce more. They'd like to see a lot more content. And other people that do what I do produce a lot more volume. But for me, I don't want to put it out unless it's how I want it to be, unless it's done. Otherwise, I go back on some projects that I felt rushed on or weren't quite done, and I watch them today, and I just want to redo them. I just want to do them until they're done right. I regret having done it. So now it's either how I want it or I don't publish it. And sometimes we are under a deadline or there is a practical side to this, so we push it or I make compromises some. But for the most part, I get to make it how I want, and I put in the hours to do it. And there's no correlation in income tied to this. Y'all be accused. I'm a YouTuber or whatever, of just doing this to make the almighty dollar. But like you said earlier, it's not that mighty. If I could make so much more money doing something else. The amount of time I spend on making a tedious video is not because it generates income. It's because I would do it anyway. I want to do it. I wouldn't be able to dedicate as much time. I wouldn't be able to put as many hours into it, but I would do it anyway. I did it anyway before I made this a career path. It gives my life more purpose and more meaning to go and do these things. And I do feel like it changes people's lives because they tell me it does. They tell me that when they see it or they watch it or they learn from it, that it impacted them in some way. And back to what you were saying earlier, with the crew over with Donnie hanging it all on the wall with Will and everybody, I look at that, and as a creator, I know exactly what you're saying, because when I drop a movie and I publish something on like Sunday evening for families to watch and get together, I'm strictly thinking, I just hope that everybody loves my art. I just hope that that it connects the way I'm thinking it will. I'm hoping it has that moment for people where it inspires them or educates them or motivates them in some way. That's what I'm looking for, and that's the reward. And any income generated is just icing on the cake.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what it's about. And it does bother me sometimes to be accused of other motives because they're really not there. But we do live in a world of hypercritical people who are out there. And when I was thinking about what you were saying a minute ago, I thought about it as you were talking about how sometimes just hunting in general is treated poorly or misunderstood or vilified in some way. I think within the hunting community, we do it to each other as well. But when you're talking about this art with Donnie or with Aaron, I remember, like with Aaron, that was a moment I took the photo.
Oh, you did?
I took the photo.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
And at least the one with his buck, in the bandana.
Yeah, with the muley.
Yes.
Yeah.
I took the photo. I was there. I watched the whole thing happen. I filmed it. And to be there, and I look back on it, and Aaron and I don't get along today. However, we do have a common connection in that hunting space. And in that moment, that was real. The brotherhood we felt in that moment was real. But the world can kind of get in the way. And there are things and bad feelings that can develop over time for various things. But I do think in some ways that's where art and this kind of thing can transcend some of that, because I do see that, and I see a moment in time where we're on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just going back to that wow moment, finding a capture that somebody will, rather than brush by it, rather than just walk by, oh, that's good, just keep walking, that you grab them and they say, wow, I wonder what the situation was. I wonder where the mountains were. I wonder where that piece was. I wonder who the person is that's hugging Brian, or, who's on horseback in front of Donnie crossing the river, just south of the circle, where is Aaron? Where is he out in this vast scape that's just littered with autumn and goldens and sage and everything? Where is this happening? And then to look at the portrait part of it, because so much of my pieces have portraits. I mean, it's a portrait of that particular time and space. Who was there? Who took the photo? And it's interesting that you're right, and that can never be taken away. Indifferences are indifferences, and hopefully in the end, the smoke clears and you can find yourself sitting on the same park bench and, all right, whatever. Yeah, we screwed up. I screwed up. We probably should have done things differently. But I guess I'm at just the point now. You talk about the monetary gain. All I want to do is make as much to pay for my Vermont, my Mass, my New Hampshire, and my Maine license, and to be able to hunt with my boys as long as I can. I have 3 sons, identicals, and then my youngest is 3 years removed, and that to me is super important. I've been married to the same gal for 36 years. We were elementary school sweethearts. So it's hard. It's hard to put it all in a realm that you can be creative. See, I look at you guys when you do your filming. I mean, I love watching them because it takes me out of my seat and it puts me at the Casir Mountains, up where you were. And that to me is, you say, well, you are an artist in a sense that you capture it on a live kind of situation. Whereas mine is a two-dimensional piece that I try to bring it to life in a three-dimensional way. But it's, like you say, you're creating kind of the same goals and aspirations as somebody like myself.
When I heard Jordan Peterson talking, he said, he's like, there's so many artistic domains, and some are on this domain and some are on that domain. But one of the things he said that really you can tell someone whether they do have the creative sort of gene is are they entrepreneurial? Because almost everyone who is truly entrepreneurial ends up being a creative, just on different levels, different domains. And I thought that was interesting. I've been creative in my writing in the past. I've been creative in different. When I worked as an accountant, I'm pretty strong in one domain, but really, really weak in others.
Oh yeah,
and,
likewise.
And so it does help to have to work in teams like that. Question I had for you is, there's a lot of people out there that are probably relating to what you're saying, talking about being engaging in creative endeavors. What do you say to someone who has that creative drive but is maybe not working on it, or not just feels like maybe it's not practical, it's not something that life really is going to pay them for? Because in many ways, for me, for years, I felt like, well, this is a career path that kind of business and guarantees a certain income stream, where this over here, it's real, like maybe hit or miss. How do people balance that today? What do they do? Do they go for the conservative job? Do they go for the entrepreneur thing? Do they engage in the artistic thing? Do they do both?
Well, not that I'm an expert on that, but just given somebody that's been on this planet a while and seen real good people and real bad people, worked with people that were creative, that had that right side of their brain that was always kicking away, which they were always spitting out something that, God, I never looked at it that way. Some people, it's hard because, it always comes back, well, I got a truck payment. I got to make my mortgage payment. I've got this, I got that. I got a lot of overhead, and which I get it. Because I lived it. For 13 years, I drove myself to a stainless steel table for a 5.5 hour operation. And I guess in answering that point to you, my advice to people is, can you do both? That's the ultimate question. And for some, they can't, because some people are so orientated, well, I got to do this, I got to do it in this order, way. I've got to orientate myself every day to accomplish what I need to accomplish, and I do it every day. And I guess from my experience, again, going back, looking out over the leaves on an October day, I said, you know what? We are on this planet such a fleeting moment in the broad scope of things that I actually, for lack of a better term, I said, you know what? I'm not going to work for the man to make the man happy. I think I want to do something for myself. And if it means less money in my pocket and scrounge around to get fuel to go to Maine, it is. That's the gig. Telling somebody, you should go for it. I think that's easier said than done, because, people just kind of scoff you off and say, yeah, they'll walk away saying, yeah, right. You don't tell me how to do things because I know exactly what I'm dealing with. I would just simply say, to answer your question, try to find bits and moments in your life that spiritually and emotionally can benefit the things that you have to do in life. That maybe at a point, and maybe this is just getting older, that you start to realize, I really didn't need that. I didn't need to go there. I didn't need to do this function. I didn't need to drive 6 hours to show my face up to be somebody. I've become kind of a recluse after falling away from the game, which, Brian, I don't miss one bit, not one bit. I hang out with my boys. We fish, we hunt. Justin and I were just talking about maybe getting out the still wagon, which is off of Gloucester, maybe doing some early tuning. And that to me, is super important. And I'm home every day. Like, to give you an idea, you talk about helping people. My wife is a school teacher. She's a third grade teacher. She's very good at what she does. And so I'm home. So we get up, have breakfast. I usually start painting at 5:36 in the morning, and she's getting ready to go. She's out the door at 7, but I always try to have supper for her when she gets home. But she's the one making the money. I'm the one trying to find money through the things that I love, which is, basically pissing in the wind at this point, but it is what it is. As far as, big monetary gain. And that's not what I was into, but it's just a choice, I think, that we make and that I made is, it's hard. It's hard to do things if you don't have the money to do them. But I think there's always a way to find that little piece of ground that you really enjoy doing, but maybe you think you can't do, whether it's reading, being a prolific reader, or, art is art, being a drawer or a painter, or just doing simple sketches at night where you can grab 15 or 20 minutes in the daily grind. Yeah. Just to relieve some things in you that you can leave things. So,
I heard Gary Vaynerchuk years ago say, would you rather be smiling in a Camry or crying in a Porsche? And he said, man, so many entrepreneurs or creative people come to me. If they could just be happy with $50,000 or $70,000 a year, they could do what they love for the rest of their life, and they could build some degree of like high degree of personal well-being and happiness. And his point was, it's not about the money, people. It's not. Yeah. You do need your basic needs met, but beyond that, you start to realize, I say this to my kids all the time, if you're not happy right now, getting your driver's license isn't going to fix that. Right. Graduating from high school is not going to change that. Becoming wealthy is not going to change that. If you're unhappy now with no money, you're going to be unhappy with a lot of money. Like, the money won't change it. You'll just be, your status with who you are and how you feel about yourself, right, is going to be the same. It's just you'll have a lot more money to go with the misery, And I try to tell people the same thing, like what you were saying. Life is fleeting, and I feel the same way. Visiting my grandfather and looking back, I can't believe how old everyone around me is. I can't believe how old my kids are. They're one's leaving the house to go to college here pretty soon. I'm looking around and I'm going, there is something I feel really good about, though, that I have a body of work that I feel like I've contributed to the world in terms of the podcast content I've recorded and the things I've been able to share about people and with people and the films I've been able to produce. And my films have evolved to get better over time. Yeah. And I really feel like they'll continue to do that as I really work at my craft. And I think, what's it going to be like 10 or 20 years from now? What will I have built that, is valuable? And no money, you can't put any price tag on any of that, to me.
No, your portfolio is you. And in the end, when you got people standing around your bedside and, you can feel good about what you've done. I guess that's the point I'm making for people that, take a second, that old saying, smell the roses. I never really understood that, but it does make sense where you pause, and it's just really important. Not to get off on the monetary thing, which is not that important to me. I'm more looking to create a situation where people's lives can be enriched, maybe a lot, maybe a little bit, that will help them cope with other things that may be nagging at them. just something to say, oh, that's really cool. I really like that. And we'll take a moment and think about and reflect on their own life. And God, I wish I could do that. And that's something that has always troubled me when people say, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. We were up to John's and John's son, Rye, is 8, 9 years old, maybe 10 now. He came out with a little sketch pad and we're sitting at the table and he goes, well, I can't really sketch. I said, just doodle. Just doodle. Go out. I said, your dad's got a beautiful place here. Go down the inlet. Just doodle. You can't be wrong. Because a doodle will lead to one thing, and then you start, okay, I'm going to add a little value to this. And one thing just leads to another. It's like, it's what you do. It's like, dude, we could take this one step further by, doing a more in-depth look at what the person is who's on the hike and what they're enduring, maybe away from the hike and away from the hunt. And this is like their therapy. And I guess, I don't know. I always come back to, when it's all said and done, I want to look back and say, you know what, I did everything I could to enrich people around me. No, don't get me wrong. I can be a son of a bitch, and my wife will tell you that, I can be ornery as a son of a gun. But I try to find solace in the fact that there are good people that can be even better than what they think. I think innately, everybody innately, deep inside their soul, has much more to give than what they're doing on a daily basis. I think you can probably attest to that. Like, I can do this. And those are the points that drive us to be, those outliers. And I'm a big outlier guy. I think if I work hard enough at something, if I, that old standard 10,000 hours, if I go 10,000 hours, I will see enlightenment somewhere. Now, it may be a little bit, and the freaking door is still a little bit closed, a mile down the track, but it's just, and again, it comes back to coaching and the way I dealt with kids. And I always used to say to them, you have much more in you than you even have any idea exists. Yeah. It's there. Like kids that, I can't go any further. You'd be surprised what your mind and your body can drive you to do. But you got to believe that. And you got to have somebody that encourages that fosters it, that nurtures it along the way.
Yeah, it took some guts, I imagine, to kind of move into this space you're in now and leave everything you knew that was comfortable behind.
No, not at all. Because
it was easy.
It was, Brian. I never was so fired up, and it was 10 o'clock in the morning, and if not that I drink and drive, which I don't drink hardly at all anymore, but if I could have popped a Budweiser when I got on the interstate looking at the rearview mirror with Amherst in my rearview mirror, I was never so happy.
Nice.
Just because I said, okay, this is another, people ask me about my resume. I just say to them, dude, I have got so many exits, on ramps and off ramps through my life that.
What? That is a hallmark with creative folks. Like they do so many things, learning a new craft or trade or something. I'm not the master of anything, but I'm pretty good at a lot. I think that's common for a creative person because you get bored and you move to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And that lack of stability can drive some people crazy, especially people you might be married to or that are like, you just spent 10 years developing this. Because I've always said to people, I might just stop filming hunts and doing anything in the hunting industry and then just go over here. Like, that's my personality. I might just pull up stakes and try a totally new path.
See, I look at it a little differently. I think everything that I've done, and maybe this is the more deep-rooted part of my spirituality, is, and looking back at all of them, like, I was a school teacher, a middle school teacher. I was an advisor in private school. I had Michael Schwab's son in my group. I had Cameron Douglas, Michael Douglas's son in my group. I had Faye Dunaway's kid in my group. But I look at, then I go to a public school and I'm a dean of students of a high school. So I was dealing with all the discipline. I just look at it that be willing to go, it isn't so much for me anyway, Brian, it isn't so much being bored. Just one thing that's kind of led to another. It's like my life has been kind of set out ahead of me as long as I'm willing to take those exits. or get on the on-ramp and say, all right, I'll do that. It's like I was a dean of students at a high school, and my sons, the twins, were applying to a prep school right next door, and they were hockey players. And they had a huge dorm over there. It was 100 boys, 4 floors. It looked like an ocean liner at night because the girls' wing was on the other end.
Yeah.
So you had, which is a major problem in and of itself, you had a 9th grade to 12th guys on one side and the same on the other side. So the cruising was rampant. But one day I'm in my office and the dean of students from the prep school shows up, knocks on my door, introduces himself, and he's just small talking. I say, Adam, I said, what can I do for you? Because my phone was out, my radio was always going off dealing with issues. He goes, we want you to come over to Northfield Mount Hermon. We understand your kids are applying there. They'll be able to go for free if you come over and run this dorm and be a dorm parent. I said, why? What's wrong with the dorm? We've had some problems with this and that and whatnot. So just getting back, it's these bullet points in life that lead me there. That led me there, led me to another prep school. When I got done with that prep school, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I ended up building houses for 2 years, high-end log homes with my 2 nephews, which I loved. And then the housing market fell apart.
Yeah.
We just dried up like within 6 months. I couldn't believe it. Just boom, 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 we're done. And so I'm home, unemployed. I'm on my tractor, my Kubota. I'm working on my yard. I got a phone call from a friend of mine who was a tight end at University of New Hampshire, who was at the time the head coach at Sacred Heart University. He goes, hey, Wizard, I want you to come down here. You got to help me out. And I said, what's the matter, Paul? He goes, I got real problems down here. He says, you're the only one who can fix this crap. They had just between, they had a lot of problems. I won't get into it. So next thing I know, I went back in the house. I said to my wife, Mary, I said, you're never going to believe you just called me Paul Gorham. He just hired me down at Sacred Heart University. And before I even get it out, she goes, where's Sacred Heart University? I said, it's in Fairfield, Connecticut. So we got on the map. I said, okay, it's 2.5 hours. He didn't know how he was going to pay me. This is just one of these things. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'll buy you dinner every night. And I'll slide you $200-$300 here and there. We'll make it work. Don't worry. You got to come down and help me. So 3 years later, he promotes me as a defensive coordinator. We won 2 titles. I leave there because UMass was right up the road. It was a half an hour from my house, which is the closest I've ever been to my house working on the road. And then flash forward to that August, a year and a half later, I said, I'm done with this because it's a different cat, 1 AA to 1A. It's big business. I mean, we played, BYU, Tennessee, Mississippi State. It's a big business. And I guess the point of making all these points of my life, it wasn't so much I was bored with them. It was that there was a calling to say, okay, move. And it wasn't, for me, it wasn't bored. It was like, okay, let's do this. And it was like point A to point D. I was getting closer to home.
Yeah.
And then when I got to D, which was UMass, I said, you know what? I'm real close to home now. I'm watching the leaves fall, and I don't know where my sons are hunting because they're pissing me off, calling me at 11 o'clock or 4:30 in the evening. The first thing I say, especially if they call me right after dark, is, all right, has he got one down or is he bleeding? Is he going? He goes, then the whole story, then it's like a knife in my back. I said, I'm in my office. But it drove me back to my art, back to the things that I love.
I would agree in the sense that it does feel like, the choices that I made throughout life there was like a hand of providence in many of those, because I always say like the 40-year-old Brian succeeded where the 30-year-old Brian failed, and I failed at a lot of things. Yeah. Some things were successful, half weren't. And talk about the housing in 2008, like I had so much money, everything we had sacrificed. We lived in a treehouse for like 10 years, put every penny away. We scrimped and saved and lived like, poor people and put everything into a whole subdivision only to have that housing market crash. And I expected to make, $500,000, $2 million on this, own real estate and all that, and to have it just completely implode. Yeah. And overnight, it felt like I couldn't get a single construction loan. Yep. And then the city came in and basically Portland, they just made it impossible by demanding curbs and sidewalks and everything a few years later after we'd held it through the rough times. And then it became untenable. It was no longer, all the money would be eaten up by the city.
Yeah.
And so we ended up being kind of forced out of it and just sold it for pennies on the dollar and lost all those years that I had saved. And I could have just thrown in the towel and just been like, I'm never going to do anything risky again. Or a few years ago, I could have said I could just drop this and walk away. But now I feel like I'm really where I'm meant to be. Like I feel really strongly that I'm where I'm meant to be, and that I got to this point because of being pushed throughout my life in different ways. And I do feel blessed to be right here now. I also realize like I wouldn't be here if I didn't have all those life experiences from before, because they are what shaped me for this moment.
No doubt. I couldn't agree with you more. It's interesting.
I was just saying to my kids this last week, I was saying, some things have come up that have been really hard. And I was telling them, it seems like every time you get on a roll, something, some wall comes up, or you get in something gets in your way, or just really derails your progress. But you have two options. One is you can, fold and just, okay, I guess that's it now, or I'm going to go this other direction. Or you find a way around it. You find a way to get stronger, to get better, to improve how you do what you do. You become resilient over time as you get hammered and tonged and beaten up. And I told them I'm really, really grateful for the really hard times that I went through, because they shaped me. Like without those things, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And I look back on a few really tough times, like when my wife had cancer. There are certain things about myself I still wouldn't know, and there's certain things about life I wouldn't have come to have us solidified. I just needed those things, as hard as they were. Cancer, I think, is both a curse and a blessing, and in some ways, you get to decide which one it is. And for me, I felt like it changed everything about who I am right now. And again, I wish right now in the society that we're in, more people would look at diversity and these hardships as a blessing rather than as a victim moment, Instead, it's like this moment where it could truly, without the adversity, how do you grow? How do you really become something great? Like every great man in history, as you look at them, they were faced with intense odds against them, which allowed them the moment to rise to it or to fall. Without that moment, they wouldn't be the men they are known for, and they wouldn't have become for themselves who they are. Like I feel like for me, each of the things, and mine are relatively minor, all said and done, but they were hard for me, and they shaped me.
Yeah. You mentioned your kids, and the one thing that having been married so long, and I think my three boys they've grown up to be really good men. They're good fathers, and I said to them a lot when they were kids, and I think this goes back to the resiliency of probably those that influence your life, your mother and father. But I used to say to them all the time, if you're going to whine about things, don't do it on my watch, because I don't want to hear you whining. I said, you either go one way or you go the other. And I hope you choose the one that is a little more difficult, but in the end will be much more rewarding. And, I think, you started out with your kids and dealing with this and that. I think more parents are more worried about their kids' friends being their friends than being their parents. And I think that's hard today with all the push and pulls with social media, and less attraction to being outside, less attraction to watching, I'm looking at the trees behind you, just looking up in the canopy and watching the breeze roll through it. And I think those moments are lost in a sad way, that, parenting is hard. I mean, having twins right off the get-go, I thought kid bearing was a major conspiracy against people in general, because, everybody's, oh, it's so hard. Johnny does not sleep or Mary's not sleeping. I said, yeah, put another one on top of that, double the thing. I said, you talk about driving you to drink. I said, that's the recipe. But so much of what we do with our kids demands that we sacrifice little things of our own to-dos, our own wants. But in the end, like you said, you have one of yours heading off to college. I'm sure they're going to be in a good place when they go to college, because they've probably had a little bit of dad's insight, mom's insight to say, you know what, be smart and learn how to be smart, and you'll trust them as they walked out the door. And Lord knows we all worry about that as parents when they do walk out the door and they're heading to college. And but it kind of goes back to, you're talking about all the experiences that made you who you are and what you're doing now. It always comes back to me, just don't be afraid to try it. Don't be afraid to do it a little bit. Even if it's only 10 minutes a day, just try it. Don't be afraid to speak what's on your mind. Be respectful, but say what you mean to me when you say, type of deal.
Yeah.
And I think, integrity is in our youth today is something that we really got to work at. And the true meaning of humility and integrity and being somebody of sound faith, whatever that faith is, because in the end, we only have each other to look at. When we look at the mirror, when we brush our teeth at night, saying, okay, did I do it right today?
Yeah.
I hope I did it right as a parent, as a father, as a husband, as an artist, did I not make the most of my time? Because it's all going to be said and done soon. And what you leave behind is your memoirs and your legacy, that I think is something that we hope we all do right in the end.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like, I'm glad that we were able to sit down. I've been a little derelict in connecting and, having this conversation, because I've watched you for quite a long time. And it's one of those things, like we were talking, I saw something come up on Instagram, and I was like, I have got to get a hold of David, and we need to sit down. And it seems like nowadays it's never a good time.
Yeah.
It's like, it's always, and I'm like, we were talking a little bit, and I'm like, it just needs to go on a calendar, and it just needs to be done. And no matter what comes up, no matter what is going on, and I'm finding lately, as I've been trying to do that a little bit more with different people, because if you don't carve out the time and make it happen, these things just get put on the back burner and back burner and back burner. And I think I'm really remiss not to have had this conversation earlier. And but I want to say it's been a pleasure to talk to you today. It's inspiring, because what you've created has been, as sometimes I'm a sit and wait and see too. Like, a lot of people contact me all the time with things and say, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, but then you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
You're out there actually doing what you said you were going to do.
Sometimes it's longer than others. Sometimes my wife says, are you going to go out today? I said, I'm not going out for a month. I'm staying here. I'm working. I'm not interested in going outside anymore. I just all paint. And if I can end up at places like your place, and maybe sometime if you're over in the East, you definitely, if you're landing in Logan or Bradley, and there, Bradley is about an hour and a half spit from me, and Logan is about a 2.5 hour shot. But someday you'll see the painting, and I'm not hanging that again. I'm sick of toting that son of a gun around. That's going to stay in my studio. So it's always there, and you can show up uninvited, dude. And
how do people want to see your work? Where can they go?
Go to my Instagram page.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I had a website and I wasn't getting much traffic, and probably it wasn't done the way I wanted. So, and I wasn't going to pay whatever it was, $15, $20 a month. I said, this is stupid. I'm not getting any traffic from it, just a waste of money. So Instagram seems to work good, and that's it. That's the only social media I do. I don't do Twitter. I I got away from all that because I had a huge Twitter account as a recruiter in football, and I just wanted to avoid myself. But Instagram is the gig.
And so people can find you on Instagram. They can get on there and look at what you've got. And you have been to a bunch of, I've seen you, go to art exhibits and whatnot. And how has the reception been?
Oh, it's been good. The last one I did up in Rangeley, I think I would have rather been a fly on the wall. Just meet the artist, big deal. And he's ex-football coach. He probably picked up art 3 months ago or some stupid thing. I would have rather been a fly on the wall because it was interesting looking at people at FAR when they came through the door. If I was talking to somebody in the back of the room or something, I just loved seeing people's reaction to it. That wow moment. But Instagram's a gig. Feel free to DM. I'm not too hung up. I don't have a handler or anything like that. So you're gonna get me if you talk, because it's interesting. I'll be back and forth with a few people I'm saying, because I know, I've had good friends with the coach of the Eagles and the Giants, and I know they got their handlers, and I've watched them in full swing. And I don't have a handler. You get what you get. It's right here. So,
well, I'm looking at your Instagram right now, and the handle is at spelled DWISSMANART, all one word, lowercase. So it's D Wisman Art.
Yes, sir.
And you don't have nearly enough followers. You need way more followers on here. So folks, go out there and follow David. And what you're posting, it's just gorgeous. It's just so cool. No. So can folks hire you to do work for them?
Absolutely.
So
I do commission work. Yeah.
Okay. So if they have their own painting or their own photograph or something that they would like you to do, you can do that.
Yeah, I can pretty much do anything. Drive myself nuts, but I can do it. And it's that process for me, Brian, is I like that process because, we'll talk about a piece, whatever the subject matter is. Obviously, the subject matter that I'm gearing toward right now is the hunting and fishing because, that inspires the heck out of me. But I've done other pieces that are a little bit removed from that.
So they can get a hold of you with some commission work, and then let's say they see something on here that they really like. Can they buy these things?
Yes, and I don't put any prices on them because I think that warrants a conversation, a direct conversation. Going back to John Altman up to his place in Maine, they're just hammering stuff up on the wall. I've got 6 pieces up there right now. I've got 3 pieces in a local art gallery in Brattleboro, Vermont. But anybody can inquire and ask if the piece is available. I can tell them, it is, or it isn't. And we can sit down and talk, from there.
Very cool. Do you offer prints too?
I do. I tried that route. Everybody said, you got to do prints. They'll sell like wildfire. And, you mentioned something early on that artists struggle with the financial aspects of things. I'm the worst. I love creating things. I love doing what I'm doing, but I'm not really good in that regard. And everybody says, you're a dumbass. You gotta be better at this. And which I do. It's just something that it's not high on my list. Like I'd rather create them. And I'm sure so many other people struggle with this.
I'm the same way. I've had a lot of mentors come along and help me do it,
and that's huge.
That's why it's been great to do affiliate codes with sponsors, because now I just say, use this code, you save, they get a sale, and I get a little commission. And I don't have to that I can do. I can say, I use this piece, I like it, go buy it, here's your discount code, it helps us all.
Wango bango, done.
And everybody's excited to do that. But if I have to build a product, or I have to manufacture it, or I have to store it, I have to take orders, I have to ship it, now we're getting into some sketchy territory for Brian Call. That's just not, I'm not wired.
Well, you get back to the prints. I shouldn't be so condescending, but I've done a fair amount of prints, but it's usually, somebody will DM me, case in point, Adventure Amy, the gal that I've grabbed a few of her photos. The most recent one I did of a buffalo.
That's gorgeous.
And, wow. That's in the gallery right now. It's in the main window, and part of my gig with like Adventure Amy or John Timmer or Untamed, Jason at Untamed. If I do one of their paintings, I always send them a print. I always do a nice signed print because it's awesome. And actually, Amy has got it above her mantle, which is kind of cool. But if anybody's interested in prints, those are easy to do. And they're, I charge like $35-40 for a print or some stupid amount, but it's more getting it to the people and they can enjoy it. So, but all that's just, give me a call or a direct message and we'll get that done.
I mean, especially of interest, I think, to a lot of my audience would be, shots like that buffalo or the bighorn and, the fish. Like, it's just, it's universal, it just really does accommodate and beautify someone's home,
The ram is pretty special. That actually is up on the wall at John's too. I dug that out. We got to put that one up. The ram's horns on that, just a side note, the ram's horns, just his horns, took me 3 weeks on the horns. And it's a decent sized piece, but he talks to you. He looks right at you. Same as a bison. They tell a story.
Yeah. You get that one from Jason?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, it's unreal.
I appreciate it.
So cool. So folks, check that out. Go to D Wissman Art and look at some of this stuff and see if there's something on there that could beautify your home. And if you have something you want done, they know where to find you. At the very least, they should follow your page because it's fun to follow your journey. It's just fun to be around artists in general. I think you're seeing the world in the detail that some of us are taking for granted. So thank you. Appreciate you coming on.
Well, it's nice to finally get to meet you through this flat screen stuff. But
I know.
You keep in touch and be safe on your travels.
Thank you.
And take care of those kids. They'll do the right thing, Brian.
My fingers are crossed. Those teenagers are a little on the tough side, but yeah, we're getting there. So thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. You take care.
Good one.
You too.